name is Cheryl Thomas, and I am the Executive Director of Global Rights for Women, and I'm going to start this event with a land acknowledgement. We gratefully acknowledge the Indigenous people of the lands we are on today. Even though we are meeting in a virtual space, it is important for us to recognize that we have and continue to benefit from the occupation of this land since before the United States was formed as a nation. Global Rights for Women is located in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we have staff all over the state, and we acknowledge that we're on Dakota and Anishinaabe land. We recognize the historic discrimination and violence that have been inflicted on Indigenous people globally. Additionally, we understand that treatment of Indigenous women is a byproduct of colonialism, racism, and misogyny that has perpetuated the continual sexual abuse, disappearance, and murder of Indigenous women. So please join us now in a reflection moment to acknowledge the harm of the past and present, and to consider how you can join the effort to dismantle the continued oppression of Indigenous communities and restore justice. And also, since people are joining here from around the world, at this time, if you'd like to put into the chat the land that you would like to acknowledge, we would appreciate it. Thank you for those. So again, thank you all to the panelists and for all of you who are joining us here today. This is Global Rights for Women's event in collaboration with the University of Minnesota's Human Rights Program. We're really honored to be in partnership with you at the University of Minnesota. And as I mentioned, I am Cheryl Thomas. I am the Executive Director of Global Rights for Women, and I am today's moderator. Our mission at Global Rights for Women is to end domestic and sexual violence through legal system and community change and reform. And we welcome this today, all of your comments and questions in the Q&A feature on Zoom, or you can put them in the chat after this conversation. We'll be sending out a link with the recording. And if you need a certificate of attendance, please contact Sophia Morissette, and she is going to put her email in the chat. And again, I thank you so much for acknowledging where you are coming from. I'm looking at these in the chat, and also the Indigenous lands that you are on. Today, we'll be talking about gender-based violence in conflict areas, a huge, huge issue in our world today. And as we approach International Women's Day, next week on March 8th, Wednesday, we want to acknowledge and raise up the voices of the horrors of this conflict that has on women and girls throughout the world. We recognize that there are survivors here with us today, and part of this conversation may be triggering, and we're including resources for people in the US and throughout the world in the chat for those who need safety and assistance. And I got a message that the sound is kind of low. Are we able to, am I being heard? Okay, we're getting some, thank you for that. I'll speak up a little bit. Additionally, I'd like to note that our guests are working and living in active conflict zones. And for those listening, please be patient with any technical or communications issue we have that might arise. While we hope that these interruptions don't happen, a panelist may drop off at a moment's notice due to these kind of technical challenges, and we're going to be working to get them back in and make sure their voice is heard. So right now, I'm going to introduce those panelists to you. I'm honored to share the space with such courageous individuals who are so generously sharing their experiences with us today. We offer our deepest gratitude for their passion as caregivers and human rights defenders under some of the world's most dire circumstances. Thank you for being with us here today. So I'm going to start with some brief introductions, and then please, you speakers who are, yes, you can all turn on your cameras. You speakers who are, you can expand on that as much as you like during the during your comments. Kerlande Mataye Joseph, from Haiti, founded Foundation Essence Elle in 2017 with peers who shared her vision to contribute to young people's intellectual, economic, and civic education. Welcome, Kerlande, and to train and financially empower vulnerable women through sustainable projects and advocate for the human rights of women and girls. We're so grateful that you've joined us, Kerlande, and don't hesitate to expand on that when you speak. Iluta Lache is with us. Hello, Ilute. Ilute and I have worked for many years together. She is the founder of the Marta Center, currently the center's director and board member. She's a leading expert in Latvia and well beyond in the field of domestic violence and human sex trafficking, providing experience and expertise on the local and global dynamics of domestic violence and human trafficking. She's actively engaged in lobbying for necessary changes in Latvian legislation regarding women's human rights and violence against women, especially sexual exploitation. And Anna, welcome, Anna Orel. So thank you so much for being here again to all of you. She's the project manager of the Andreev Foundation in Ukraine. The foundation is in the Kyiv region and provides mobile teams of psychologists who travel to reach survivors in formerly occupied areas of Ukraine and offers them psychological aid. Thank you again so much, Anna, for being with us. Hale Tika is an obstetrician. Hi, Hale. Thank you for being here, and gynecologist practicing in Eider Hospital, an academic institution based in the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia. He works to safeguard the lives of women and girls during a 2-plus-year-old war in the Tigray region. Hale says the magnitude and the severity of gender-based violence is a tormenting experience there. He's cared for hundreds of women and girls who have survived and sustained atrocities. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here, Hale. Mohammed Tahir Yahya is an obstetrician and gynecologist in urogynecology and a fellow and FGMC expert. Thank you so much for being here with us, Mohammed Tahir. He holds a degree in medicine from Gondar University in Ethiopia and a degree specializing in obstetrics and gynecology from Mikkel University. He is also a final year fellow in urogynecology in partnership with the Worldwide Fistula Fund. Huge thanks again for being here with us. And who have I missed? Have I gotten everyone? Okay, wonderful. So we are going to go on to our questions now. I want to introduce the topic by saying rape and sexual violence are committed out of individual opportunism in a lawless context when we're talking about it in conflict areas. It is used against women and girls, but also against men and boys. We do need to acknowledge that, by armed forces, rebel groups, and terrorist organizations. This is not just a phenomenon of war and conflict, but gender-based violence will occur before, during, and after conflict. Under international law and in the work of the UN, 8 different forms of conflict-related sexual violence are distinguished: rape, sexual slavery, prostitution, forced pregnancy, forced abortion, forced sterilization, forced marriage. And I have no doubt that all of you on our guests on this call today have seen these situations in your contexts. Today, we have with us esteemed guests from around the world dealing with these situations on the ground. I'm honored to be here again with each one of you and grateful that you can take the time to talk with us about your experiences and what can be done to change how survivors are treated in conflict areas and take steps towards peace and nonviolence on a global scale. So I'm going to start with you, Iluta Lache. Iluta is in Latvia. Gender equality exists in all societies, whether or not there's conflict and displacement, Iluta, yet in fragile or humanitarian settings, it becomes a fertile ground for the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war. We have seen this time and time again over our history globally. How has the weaponization of sexual violence been manifest in the Russian incursion of Ukraine, Aluta, and how do we stop and prevent the rampant gender equality that considers women's bodies as spoils of the war? Can you speak to that?
Yes, you're right. All of us are witnessing the brutal sexual violence that is used as a weapon of Russia's war in Ukraine since a full-scale invasion in Ukraine on February 24th last year. It's year-round already. We witness that international law is violated. Every occupied territory reveals evidence of torture and even genocide towards Ukrainian people. Women have suffered from rape, including gang rape, other forms of sexual violence. Women have been harassed and have suffered from threats and violence in so-called filtration procedures organized by Russian army. Ukrainian children are being kidnapped and brought to Russia. 7 million people left their country, but almost half of the inhabitants are displaced, most of them women and children being in extremely vulnerable situations. Our tiny country, Latvia, with less than 2 million inhabitants itself, now hosts more than 40,000 refugees from Ukraine, most of them women and children. This massive inflow of refugees leads us to question our own gender equality policies, welfare systems, and access to decent housing. Also, European Union has organized hosting mechanisms for temporary protection, with temporary protection directives providing the same access to services as for EU citizens. And there are countless efforts of NGOs, businesses, and governments to ensure long-standing support for refugees. We can also see the flaws in the interpretation of international women's human rights norms. We see that there are no clear mechanisms nor clear understanding of gender-based violence that can indirectly lead to exploitation of vulnerable situation of women and children by criminal networks. For example, Ukrainian organizations have called for united, coordinated, and clear policies to end the demand for sexual exploitation, prostitution, and surrogacy. But there are still states that believe that women from conflict zones want to be in Brussels willingly. The UN December 15th resolution about trafficking of women and girls also calls upon governments and relevant United Nations bodies to take appropriate measures to raise public awareness on addressing the root causes that lead to all forms of exploitation of at-risk women and girls, in particular those in vulnerable situations, and especially to eliminate the demand that actually fosters all forms of exploitation, including sexual exploitation and forced labor, to publicize the laws, regulations, and penalties relating to this issue, and to emphasize that trafficking is a serious crime. But there are only few states that have effective regulation on the punishment of pimps as well as sex buyers. Therefore, it's really crucial to work on international and state level to develop proper gender equality laws that are clear about what is gender-based violence and can help build a common understanding about these issues. Marta Center has raised its voice and strengthened the voice of Ukrainian grassroots organizations on international forums about sexual violence against women and children, prevention of trafficking, and the need to support grassroots women activists as they continue to support other women working 24 hours, 7 days per week in desperation, experiencing attacks, cuts of electricity, internet, food, etc., etc. On the first day of Russia's invasion, we asked activists what we can do and how we can help. The year is over and we will continue. We will continue to support women grassroots activists with remote psychological consultations, improvement and localization and women peace and security action plans, documentation of war crimes. In autumn, it was around 50 registered crimes. Now there are around 200, but it's still, if you look at the huge Ukraine, it's a small number, and we know the reality. We will continue to support victims of sexual violence, developing services for such victims like shelters and other kind of facilities. So far, around 120 women and girls have received such support. We will continue to support women in emergency situations, supporting a call line, and we will continue to support the evacuation of women and children from dangerous regions where shooting and bombing takes place. We will support police, women, investigators, and social workers who provide support to victims and have also started to suffer mentally themselves. We will continue to support the education of social services and security institutions that document war crimes and help victims while ensuring confidentiality for victims. Through all these activities, we also know that victims that suffered from Russia's aggression in 2014 feel encouraged to report their crimes, the crimes that they suffered from. And we will continue to educate organizations that work with refugees here in Latvia to prevent their incompetence when identifying risks of trafficking and recruitment for trafficking. So we will continue to provide psychological support for refugees and organize different socializing activities and share our best practices, what and how we do here in Latvia for organizations from Ukraine when they want to take these practices back to their country. We see and understand that it is the responsibility of everyone of us to do everything we can to help Ukrainian people and other people in conflict zones in these senseless conflicts and senseless wars. And it is vital that governments and institutions take concrete actions and set norms in place to shape an international system so that in the future, not a single woman or child will be mistreated and abused on the road to safety and peace. Thank you for your attention.
Beautiful comment, Saluta, and I'm so grateful for your insight in connecting the violence that women and gender-based violence that women and girls and boys and men experience to the so-called peacetime pandemic of violence against women and girls. These are not inseparable. When we create systems that allow impunity and don't prioritize this, we need to understand that the headlines in the conflict situations are only exacerbations of what's going on for women and girls in so much of the world and so many of their lives. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. I'd like to move on to Hale Tika. You have been working in Tigray's largest hospital during the war that broke out in Ethiopia, starting November 2020. Hale, could you please share your experience in handling the cases of gender-based violence, the scale and severity of the sexual assault in the war in Tigray, and was it possible even always to provide care to the victims? And then please, Hale, any messages you have for our international audience?
Thank you, Cheryl, for inviting me to talk about this important event and for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Hale Tika. As Cheryl stated, I am an obstetrician and gynecologist working in Aider Hospital in the war-torn Tigray region of northern Ethiopia. Before talking about gender-based violence, let me briefly explain the conflict in Tigray. Tigray is one of the 10 regional states that constitute the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, the second most populous country in the African continent and located in the Horn of Africa. The political feud and tensions between the federal government and Tigray regional state authorities since 2018 led to a full-fledged war that started on November the 3rd, 2020, and continued until November the 2nd, 2023. This war has destabilized the entire nation, left hundreds of thousands dead, forced millions to live in starvation, and given rise to a wave of atrocities. Regardless of the cause of the war, women and girls paid the steepest price in this conflict. Specifically, the scale and the severity of gender-based violence women and girls endured in the Tigray war is deeply troubling. Though largely overlooked because of the imposed restrictions a few months into the conflict from evidences leaked by some international observers, human rights groups, UN agencies, and international media outlets, the world very well knew that violence against women and girls was being used as a weapon of war during this conflict. Both the United Nations and the United States on different occasions acknowledged that women and girls in Tigray have been subjected to rape, gang rape, sexual slavery, forced marriage, and other forms of sexual and gender-based violences. They understood that systematic rape was being used as a weapon of war. However, their knowledge was followed with indifference and inaction. As a result, according to a community assessment in the region, more than 120,000 women and girls in Tigray are projected to have sustained different forms of gender-based violence during this conflict. As doctors working in the only functioning healthcare institution, we have witnessed atrocities of biblical proportions committed against women and girls. We have heard harrowing stories of victims, from those who were raped in front of their families, their partners, and their children, to those who were taken to the bushes and tied up in trees and gang raped for days. The perpetrators gang raped them for days until their victims lost consciousness. In some cases, the perpetrators burn their victims' genitalia, mutilate their body, and break their bones. While being raped, their closest relatives and partners were forced to wage them at gunpoint. Some women and girls were the subjects of forced disappearance. We have had survivors whose genitalia were burned. We have had mothers with foreign bodies in their genitalia, including nails and other metallic materials, dirty plastics, and used condoms. While raping them, they told them that they are purifying their blood, cleaning them of their evil Tigrayan identity. They told us that the assailants were trying to intimidate them, demoralize them, and humiliate them using ethnic slurs at all occasions. During the entire active war and siege periods, and as only hospital providing care to these women and girls, did we have family planning options? No. Did we have abortion medications? No. Did we have antibiotics for prophylaxis of sexually transmitted infections? No. Did we have antiretroviral drugs to prevent the victims from HIV? No. With nothing at our disposal, provision of care to these brutally attacked women was sparingly possible. As a result, women and girls in Tigray have suffered from physical injuries, psychological trauma, unwanted pregnancies, and sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. Their condition has led to poverty, displacement, and food insecurity. As I said at the beginning of my talk today, the world knew that women and girls in Tigray were being raped to a scale of severity that the world has never seen before. Though some brave people stood firm and voiced their concerns against this barbaric action, the international community mostly betrayed women and girls in Tigray. We know and we understand that there were people, organizations, and countries out there who had the means and the power to prevent this from happening, but they chose to keep silent. As Aristotle once said, the separation from law and justice made them the worst animals and emboldened the perpetrators to keep humiliating, terrorizing, degrading, and raping the women and girls of Tigray to the extent that 120,000 women and girls are projected to have sustained one of the worst forms of sexual violence the world has witnessed before. The saddest part of the story is, even though it has been months since the peace agreement was signed, these victims have gotten neither service nor justice, neither access nor redress, neither reparation nor protection. The victims of gender-based violence in this war are yet to see if justice is going to be served. With despair and hopelessness, women and girls persistently tell us that they would rather have died instead of surviving with so much humiliation. The women and girls of Tigray still demand accountability from the perpetrators. Only by the provision of justice and accountability can we hope to achieve lasting peace and prevent similar future violences. Gender-based violence in the Tigray war is a grave and urgent issue that demands the utmost attention. The world must not remain silent or indifferent to the suffering women and girls in Tigray are continuing to endure. The provision of medical care, psychological support, legal aid, and livelihood opportunities for survivors of gender-based violence is highly needed. The world must stand in solidarity with women and girls of Tigray, and with victims of gender-based violence anywhere, and demand justice, peace, and dignity for all. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Hale, for that powerful comment, those powerful comments. And I'm grateful for your courage in naming what you have seen. And I hope that people are also watching the chat and to see your colleagues and people familiar with what is happening in your region are also offering information there. So for all the participants, please do check out that chat. And like I say, you know, it's interesting when you say that we do so often in our world have the power and the knowledge and the experience to do something, and we don't. So that has been certainly a theme that continues on the issue of the global pandemic of gender-based violence against women and girls. So again, your courage is instrumental to change in this regard. Thank you. I'm going to move now to our colleague from Haiti, Kerlande. Gender-based violence spikes in societies due to breakdown of the rule of law. So different dynamics, we're going to hear similar themes. The availability for arms and militia and gangs, and the normalization of gender-based violence as an additional element of pre-existing, as we said before, gender discrimination. Kerlande, your work with Fondation Essentielle, the organization you founded in Haiti, is to break down barriers girls and women face in accessing education and economic opportunities. These barriers include the constant fear of targeted attacks. We worked with you a little bit on this in Haiti, and ongoing threats of sexual assault in private and public spaces. How do you support girls in these circumstances, Kerlande? And are there ways the international community can also support Haitian women and girls? Thank you so much for being with us, Kerlande.
Thank you, Cheryl, for this question. It's an honor for me to be part of this wonderful panel talking about such an important topic, gender-based violence. But before even talking about the work of Fondation Essentielle in Haiti, please allow me to present an overview of the situation that the population has faced daily for 3 years, especially women and girls. Currently in Haiti, nearly 1.5 million people live in areas under the control or influence of gangs. Due to the widespread impunity and easy access to high caliber weapons and ammunition, these gangs can commit the most heinous acts of violence, sexual violence, and other human rights violations without fear. They use kidnappings, assassinations, and gender-based violence as a powerful tool to instill fear in the population and to establish their power. In 2022, there were nearly 900 cases of kidnappings, a number that may increase in 2023, while 16 police officers were killed by gang members in January 2023 alone. No one was spared. According to a report published by EDIT, an organization working in the Goddard's Department of Haiti, a number of 149 documented cases of rape was counted, which includes 131 girls between the ages of 3 and 17, and 16 women between ages of 18 and older committed in 2022, compared to the 107 in 2021. In an article published in the daily newspaper Le Nouvelliste on December 5th, 2023, RNDDH, Réseau National de Défense des Droits de l'Homme, a human rights organization based in Port-au-Prince, reported 72 cases of rape, including 19 gang rapes and 17 murders as a result of these rapes. These women and girls ages 10 and up were mostly raped in the presence of their parents or husbands. These assaults were perpetrated between April and July 2022 during clashes between armed gangs in different working class neighborhoods of Port-au-Prince, including Cité Soleil, one of the largest slums in Haiti. I need to point out that the undocumented rape cases is even larger because what happened because of the failure of the justice system. Many women, they don't want to press charges, or they fear to do so because they can get killed after by the rapist or a member of his family. So because of that, they prefer remaining silent. In Cité Soleil, for example, women and girls can face rape violence during gang attacks. For example, a rival gang can decide to attack another gang and do it 2 or 3 times in a row. It happens that women and girls are sexually assaulted, killed, or left for dead each time this attack occurs. As you know, GBV can take many forms: physical, sexual, verbal, psychological, and even financial. Speaking of finance, in October 2022, inflation reached a record of 47.2% in Haiti, which significantly weakened the economy, leaving the population in a state of widespread destitution, where women and girls are the most affected financially, socially, and psychologically. In these circumstances, at Fondation Essentielle, we work on supporting women and girls victims of gender-based violence through learning sessions, providing psychological assistance. But these actions are far from being enough. Most of these girls don't go to school due to financial issues. So it is important that they can get access to proper education in order to provide for themselves in the future. It is the same scenario for the women. After being sexually assaulted, they need not only psychological, but also financial assistance to help them move forward. To prevent gender-based violence and provide more meaningful assistance to victims, we call on international organizations and institutions working in this area to provide financial reinforcement to local organizations like Fondation Essentielle that are struggling to educate, provide capacity building through psychological care, leadership, and resilience to GBV victims and vulnerable women and girls in Haiti. As women, we have this capacity of resilience, which allows us to get back on our feet, even after we went through the worst. In Haiti, the lack of all kinds of opportunities is shocking. So this is why I am kindly requesting the international community to support our work by contributing somehow in giving opportunities to women and girls that will help them achieve their goals, be more emancipated, and become true leaders in their community. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Caroline, for those beautiful comments. Again, so powerful. And I notice a theme here continuing through your comments and our other speakers about just the impunity
Yes.
with which these acts continue to be carried out around the world. And if you'll notice in the chat, there's some examples of these centuries old expressions of disbelief and shame, of shaming women when they do report their stories. So I'm so grateful to you for your work in this horrific situation in Haiti, and we'll hopefully have a few more opportunities to discuss it further. I wanted to mention that I didn't do this before. We will have an opportunity at the end. We're leaving some time so that your questions in the chat can be answered, and you'll be able to pose those, and then our speakers can comment on those and answer. We have two more speakers, Anna Orel. I'm going to move on to you at this point. Your work provides mobile teams of psychologists who travel to reach survivors in formerly occupied areas of Ukraine and offers them psychological aid. I would love for you to talk, Anna, about what is it we should understand about the psychological impacts of rape and war.
First of all, thank you for invitation. And I'm so grateful for the possibility to talk about my country and about women and children in Ukraine. And maybe you hear the alarm switch on. It means that some Russian air forces in the sky near Ukraine. And it means that I need to go to a bomb shelter. So I will continue. Ukraine is experiencing a terrible tragedy.
Anna, please don't sacrifice your safety for this.
No, it's okay. We have this alarm almost every day. It means that Russian air force is near the sky, and sometimes they hit rockets from Caspian Sea, from the Russian territory, and these rockets, they fly thousands of kilometers, and there is no safety place in Ukraine, nowhere. So our reality, unfortunately. As I said, Ukraine is experiencing a terrible tragedy. With the full-scale invasion of Russia, millions of people evacuated abroad. They lost their loved ones, their usual lives, homes, and jobs. In the occupied cities, the Russian militaries committed serious crimes, murders, tortures, rapes of civilians. Therefore, Andreev Family Foundation, with the help of Women for Women International, organized group psychological sessions for women who survived through occupation and found themselves in critical situations because of war. We visited more than 80 villages in Kiev region and partly Chernihiv region, and we organized their psychological group sessions. First, it was really hard because people didn't trust us. They didn't understand what for and why they need to work with psychologists. But I need to say that all people here have panic attacks. They have problems with sleeping, eating. Some of women started to use alcohol, unfortunately. And it was really hard, but step by step, we conducted these psychological group sessions. And in this way, we detected first victims of sexual violence. People started to trust, and they became more talkative, more open, and they talked to our psychologists about what happened with them, about sexual violence, which were committed by Russian forces during the occupation. So at this date, our psychologists, they are working with 40 victims of sexual violence, and 10 of them are children. We have different age from 5 age till 80. So it means that, Russian forces, they wanted to destroy mentally our people, and sexual violence, it is a really weapon in this war. And all our victims, they get psychological support in format of individual sessions. Sometimes our psychologists, they come to their homes even because people don't want to go out. And we have very strict rules about privacy. We never shared information, private information, or some stories or personal, stories, details. And we really appreciate people's trust. Also, we want to provide these victims of sexual violence with comprehensive help. We also launched the hotline, and physically we work in Kyiv region and Chernihivska region, but all people who survive through violence, they can call on our hotline from different regions in Ukraine. And also we organized with our partners from maternity hospital number 2 in Kyiv. We organize medical examination who survive through occupation. So we bring professional doctors to villages, and in a rural area, women, unfortunately, they have no possibility to apply to go to Kyiv, for example, for such examinations, and it's very important. Also, we provide victims of sexual violence with humanitarian aid, because people almost 1 year, they have no job, no money, and they have often children, and they are in really terrible situations. Also, we work with Office of General Prosecutors, and our psychologists help victims during interrogations. Because we faced a very, very big problem. People don't want to talk. They don't want to share their stories. And after work with our psychologists, they start to talk, and this helps to investigations. So prosecutors can document all details, and this will help in future for rapists must answer, and Russian soldiers must answer what they committed here in Ukraine. And our goals are to help survivors. We really need to raise resources, for have the possibility to help, and to help these victims to restore their life. And we really need to continue our psychological support in order to make huge steps in the investigations. So we have big work in future, but our women are so brave, and they so inspire us also. And our strength, is to live on and to hold their hands, and I'm sure that we will survive together these hard times.
Thank you so very much, Anna. It's such a powerful testament to the work you direct service providers do, not only in the essential work of caring for these survivors, but in walking beside them as they are able to tell their stories and address the impunity and ensure accountability for these crimes, which is just so rare in the world, that accountability. I'm going to move on now. Thank you so much again, Anna. To Mohammed Tahir Yaha, and back to Ethiopia, I'd like to ask you a question, Mohammed Tahir, just about your experience. What does it mean to be a doctor when you're seeing patients who've experienced some of the worst cruelties and injuries you can possibly imagine? And then you're carrying out your job, your own job, carrying your own trauma in these dire circumstances. How do you and other providers take care so you can continue to work? And what gives you hope, Mohammed Tahir? You're muted.
Thank you for having me, Cheryl Thomas and other colleagues. Actually, much has been said by Dr. Harley. We are from the same hospital and from the same university, and we have experienced the same kind of trauma throughout the past 2 years.
Oops, I think you hit your mute again, Mohammed Tahir.
to explain the magnitude of the problem in Tigray, in the Tigray region. I am from the same place as Dr. Halle. So we have experienced the same kind of trauma over the past 2 years. So let me just explain to you that around 5 months ago, I had the opportunity to visit the worst affected area because of this war, the western part of the Tigray. So to explain what a mother looks like during this war, over the past 2 years, I had to examine around 110 mothers for fistulas and for pelvic organ prolapses, which can be operated. Of these 110 mothers, 90 of these mothers were gang raped by 4 or 5 women. And it was overwhelming that these mothers had to endure that they were displaced from their homes, one. Then they sheltered. They were given some shelters from non-governmental organizations, and their shelter were bombed by drones and by air. Then they lost part of their family members. So a mother had to tell me that she lost her child and she was left only with her grandchildren. Then on her way to another place, she was gang raped by soldiers. Then this mother was complaining that she had UTI. She was unable to control her urine. She was complaining of discharge and the like. And at that time, she had no food to eat. Then this is the situation, and there was no medications in any of the centers because around 70% of the health facilities were dismantled, and the health professionals were also displaced. Some of them were killed, and the like. So it was an unprecedented situation, overwhelming and unprecedented situation, painful, and it was done deliberately to dehumanize. It was not just a kind of occasion. It was not just a gang rape. It was done deliberately to dehumanize the mothers, which are the representatives of our region. And it was just done purposely, deliberately to dehumanize the Tigrayans in general, us as a Tigrayan. So as my colleague Halle said it, to purify the blood, to dismantle them, to dehumanize them, and the like. So the situation was unprecedented, and there was no medications to treat the UTI. There was no any kind of help that you can give to the mothers, except for some kinds of fine helps. But there are governmental and non-governmental organizations which are providing some kind of help to these mothers. So to explain it, 1, it was overwhelming. 2, it was unprecedented. 3, it involved the whole region, not just part of the region, but the whole region. The region is with a population of around 7 million to 8 million, and it involved the whole of the region, from every corner of the region, and it involved from children to elderly, boys, girls, all age, from 4 years of age to around 8 years of age. So it was this left us just helpless and hopeless at that time. And at that time, there was no electricity, no transportation, no medication, no banking system, and nothing was there. Except, in addition to that, there was air bombings and drone bombings, and the like, in addition to the gang rape. I just want to create an imagination on how our mothers have to endure such a kind of inflict and such kind of pain throughout the 2 years. So much has been said by my colleague, Dr. Halle, but this was the situation. In this situation, we doctors were hungry also. We were deprived of the money. We couldn't access our bank accounts and the like, but as a doctor, you have to be there for your clients, for the patients, for mothers and sisters when they need you most. So we had to help our mothers, despite the bombings, despite you can be killed. By the way, whenever you are going to the institutions or hospitals, you can be killed. You don't know whether you are going to return home or not, but you have to help. So being a doctor in those dark situations, in those helpless situations, in those hopeless situations, means to be there with your life for the needy, for the mothers who need you most at the right moment. That is what a doctor means that I have observed during the past 2 years for me. So there are two things. One is the reality in our world where conflict is right over there, right here and there. And the law is the power, or the power is the law, and nobody respects the law except for the power. So the reality is this, and the other thing is the hope. So what gives us hope is that our mothers are the heroes for us. They are the survivors. They still believe in that there is a bright future in tomorrow. There are still good people out there in the world. Even if the evil people have done this much to their life, there are still good people out there who can help them, who says that we are with you. And there are NGOs, there are people who sacrifice their lives living from it could be from the western part, the western, or it could be from Asia, or it could be from every part of the world, but they come and they want to help our mothers. This gives you hope that there are still good people out there. Otherwise, with the reality, conflict is inevitable. There are ongoing conflicts in the world right now. There will be conflicts tomorrow. There were conflicts yesterday or before tomorrow. And people throughout history do not learn from their mistakes. There was this First World War, and people do not learn from their mistakes. There was Second World War, because they didn't learn what has been done, either damage or hurt, pain, killings during the First World War. Then they ended up having a Second World War, and they are threatening to have a Third World War. Wherever there are conflicts, whenever there are conflicts, the most vulnerable are the mothers and the daughters. And I still believe that in reality, there are conflicts here, there are conflicts there, there are conflicts today, and there will be conflicts tomorrow. This is inevitable. This is human reality. We have to accept it. But it shouldn't be at the cost of the lives, the dignity, and the respect of our.
Mohammed Tahir, we have lost you for just a minute. Your screen is frozen, and when you come back on, we'll continue. And just if you can hear me, I want to thank you for those incredible words. And I am so touched by your statement that what gives you hope is the survivors themselves. And I hope that we can actually think about having a world where there isn't this kind of conflict and violence and breakdown, both in the times of these disasters and humanitarian crises and in so-called peacetime. We have just a few more minutes and would love to have your questions in the chat. While you're doing that, Pat, maybe you can even jump in and pose some of these. There's been so many valuable comments in the chat. I hope that you're all looking at that information too, a beautiful expression of solidarity from the women of Tigray to the women of Ukraine and women and girls of Ukraine and all the survivors there. So grateful for that. Here we go. Let's see. Yeah, go ahead and turn on your cameras to the panelists. And while we're waiting for some questions, do any of you, our panelists, did some thoughts or even questions of your co-panelists or additional thoughts that came to mind while you were hearing them speaking? Go ahead and express those right now. Anyone have any thoughts about something that Mohammed Tahir or Anna or Kerlan said?
I can also point to Abraha's question in the Q&A, which I think this whole conversation has really led to this point, which is really about international accountability and support in, as Abraha noted, the highest effective territories regarding medical services, legal services, prosecution for perpetrators, etc. So would anyone like to comment on that?
Thank you for that, Pat. Any thoughts about that? Luta, were you going to say something?
Yes, actually, it's also listening to panelists and listening to this question. It's actually the issues that we need to end this impunity. Really, we need to end this impunity. We need to find ways how to, first of all, how to prevent all this violence, but also how to encourage victims to report and how to actually identify all these crimes and punish perpetrators, because punishment of perpetrators, it's also part of the therapy for victims, that they see that actually these persons, they cannot go without paying for the crimes. And currently what we see all around the world, in most of the cases, it's not the case, whether it's domestic violence or it's war or it's trafficking. So it's really important that we join our hands and we work for this against these brutal crimes and punishment for perpetrators, and we need to have also clear norms in our UN systems and national legislations, and set up tribunals and whatever, just that help to hold these perpetrators accountable.
Thank you. Huge thanks for that, Aluta. All of us on this screen right here see so profoundly the lack of accountability for perpetrators of violence at every level, state violence, private violence. I'm interested in other panelists' thoughts about that.
Yes, I would like to say something about impunity in Haiti, which is heartbroken because the justice system has failed. So with the gangs, they win. So they know that even if they killed or rape, nothing would happen to them. So that's why women who are victims of gender-based violence, they don't even care, press charges, because they know that nothing will be done. So this is the situation in Haiti currently.
Yeah, and that is an utter failure, a breakdown in our community systems.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Hale, please, would you comment?
Thank you, Cheryl. I think there is a question which is directly forwarded to myself and Dr. Mohammed.
Good.
And what it says is, how are providers coping to be able to provide care in such horrible situations? Please share one best coping mechanism that you have experienced in your local situation. For Drs. Hale and Yahya, what kind of help from the IC do you and your colleagues need the most at this time? So for this, you will be surprised that my colleagues, the panelists and participants, that I have not received my salary for 2 years now. This is a fact on the ground. I have not received my salary for 2 years. Yeah, maybe you have seen the news on BBC that doctors were among those begging for food in the streets, going for food donations, like parcels of food, 10 kilos of wheat, and so on. So it is, I don't know, to be honest, it has been months even after the peace deal is signed, and yet we have not received a penny from our salary. So sometimes you rely on your parents who are farmers. You ask them for food, and you ask people to share whatever they have, and so on. So I can say we have developed a coping mechanism but we are just surviving. To be honest, I cannot explain the difficulty. Not only not getting our salary, we until a month or so, we were not even able to access whatever saving we have in our bank accounts. Imagine in 21st century, you are denied to access the money that you have saved in your bank account. You are denied to have an internet access, and there was no any phone conversations whatsoever allowed in the entire Tigray for more than 2 years. So honestly, I wouldn't say we have developed a coping mechanism, all of us similarly, but different people do different things to survive. And the worst thing, after the peace deal is signed, there is no salary, and there is an exodus of healthcare professionals to, you know, people are running for their lives. They have suffered enough. We have suffered enough. And now people are just looking for a means of survival. People are going wherever they can be paid. So what I ask for the international community, apart, you know, and on top of that, the survivors, I have outlined it very well that they have not gotten service. Can you imagine in the 21st century? In the 21st century, there was nothing whatsoever. No form of family planning was available in the biggest teaching hospital in Tigray. No form of family planning, no emergency contraceptive pill, no implants, no ICD, nothing was available at a certain moment of this conflict. So what I ask the international community, like I have said in my speech earlier, this is justice must be served, and the victims should get service and justice. Perpetrators of this heinous crime, if justice is not served, other people will learn that they can escape with their crimes.
Exactly. And this,
so, yeah.
Holly, thank you so much. How is it that
it's very, very difficult for me to put things in perspective, because so many things come into my mind, you know, thinking what we have been through as doctors, caring for women in Tigray region. We have tried so many improvisations. Cheryl, we have washed gloves and reuse them. In the operation theater, we have washed gloves and use them as pack. We have forced patients to use expired drugs, though this is a very dangerous intervention, but we have to exercise this dangerous calculus. We tried all our best to prevent this, but with nothing at our disposal, we were forced to send patients go home and die. And the only option we had was to cry with the attendants. And it's so difficult just to put everything what we have experienced in this very narrow slot of time. But yeah,
I am so grateful for you, Holly. And you bring up the issue. So much is expected of you, to as someone who is dedicated your life to serving these, and then you are also become a survivor in a completely different way, of course, of this systemic breakdown. I just can't express my gratitude to you enough. I'm going to, we have, Carland has her hand up. Anna, I think you had your hand up first. Let us, the women of Tigray are putting just beautiful messages in the chat. And I just am very humbled. I am just very humbled by the presence of all of you here. And if we can just, I know we're over time, but I would really like to have Anna and then Carland, would you kind of say the last words here?
Yes. I just want to thank all participants, and I thought that, we have different countries, different griefs, but we are so similar. We have similar problems, and I'm sure that we need to unite our all efforts, and we need to respect rights of victims, and we need to help these people, and justice should win. And I just want I just want to express my gratitude to participants and to thank you for sharing their experience.
That's beautiful, Anna. Thank you. Kerland?
Yes, thank you. Well, I would like to mention that kidnappings is a real problem in Haiti, because whenever you go out, you don't know if you won't be the next victim. And depending on the person of the family, they can ask for $1 million for ransom. So many families, they have to sell their houses, everything they have, in order to pay for the ransom. And while being
The ransom, you're saying? The ransom?
yes, for the ransom. And sometimes they send videos of the kidnappers. They send videos to your family showing how they torture you so they can get the money faster. And for women, they do every nasty thing you can imagine while they kidnap you. So it's very hard now. Most people, we decide to work from home because the streets are not safe. You are being kidnapped. When you think it's police officers that is checking you, and it's kidnappers, so you can't make the difference. They wear police officers' uniforms. You can't make the difference between real police officers and kidnappers in Haiti. This is how the situation is right now.
Thank you for that, Kerland. There are so many dynamics that, as you say, we cannot even imagine happening here. And I am going to end our webinar now. I want to again express my deepest gratitude to all of you who have taken the time and the courage to raise your voice. We at Global Rights for Women and the University of Minnesota just will not be silent about these issues. And we do call on the international community to pay attention to what is happening in each of your regions, and with not only direct services, critical direct services, but institutional reforms. And at the core of this, the listening to what is happening to women and girls, and in situations of conflict, disaster, and breakdown, in addition to what is happening to them during peacetime. Huge thanks again to all of you, and we will be staying in touch with you. Please, all of the participants, take that information in the chat and use it. With great gratitude. Thank you and goodbye to you all.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.